Garden Basics with Farmer Fred is brought to you by Smart Pots, the original lightweight, long-lasting fabric plant container. It's made in the USA. Visit smartpots.com/Fred for more information and a special discount. That's smartpots.com/Fred. Welcome to the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast. If you're just a beginning gardener or you want good gardening information, well, you've come to the right spot. Summertime is insect time, especially in the garden, both the good guys as well as the ones that you didn't invite. Today, America's favorite retired college horticulture professor, Debbie Flower, tells us about the insect traps that work and don't work when it comes to controlling flies, mosquitoes, yellowjackets, fleas, ants, and a lot more. We're podcasting from Barking Dog Studios here in the beautiful Abutilon jungle in suburban Purgatory. It's the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast, and we're brought to you today by Smart Pots. And we'll do it all in just a little over 30 minutes. Let's go. Have you ever tried trapping insects? There's a lot of commercial insect traps available, and there's a lot of garden pests that you can control with traps. There's commercial traps, there's homemade traps. Some are good, some are bad, some are kind of ugly. The beautiful Debbie Flower is here, America's favorite retired college horticultural professor, with more about homemade and commercial insect traps. This, when it comes to integrated pest management, is one of the first steps that you should take when controlling a bad bug.
Absolutely. Traps are specific to the insect that you're trying to trap. And so you're not going to interfere with the life of anything else.
Yeah, we should point out, too, that a lot of these traps are basically just bait holders, and the insect may take that bait back to their nest and die. But that's still considered a trap. Others
are sticky, and the insect sticks to it and dies in place. The one I suspect people might be most familiar with is a pantry moth trap. So it's used indoors. It's not a garden pest, but sometimes you find little brown moths flying around your kitchen, and you'll open something, maybe cereal. I've had them in spices, pasta, and you'll find little brown worms. And those are the larvae of these pantry moths. And so you can pretty readily get these pantry moth traps. They're made from cardboard. They put together to become like a triangle house, like an A-frame house. They're sticky, and you throw in a little card, and that's the pheromone, and they collect just the moths. And
you can place it somewhere in your pantry and go in and check it every now and then, see how many moths are on there. You'd be amazed at how many you might find, which
disheartening sometimes.
Yeah, and it goes back to know your sources of food, that when you get food, especially if you're buying in bulk, you may want to put them in sealed plastic containers.
Right, or in the freezer. I put a lot of stuff in the freezer to avoid the moth. So that's one very effective kind of trap, and those are made for many different insect pests.
Ant traps is what comes to my mind first, especially Argentine ants that are in the house, and you see an ant trail. Well, sure, you can wipe up the trail with that, and we've talked about this before over the years about what you can use to attract them and then send them away. We will probably talk about it again. But with the commercial ant traps, probably the safest and yet effective active ingredient you should look for is boric acid.
Right.
You have made in the past the recommendation, though, to avoid borax. But borax, I think, is a little different than boric acid.
I do, too. I'll have to go to the Borax Museum. I pass it on the way to Arizona.
Yes, the 20 Mule Team Borax product.
There's actually a Borax Museum.
Yes. Well, because you have mentioned in the past that you don't want to use borax. Okay.
Have I?
But boric acid works, especially in the correct proportions. And one of my favorites is a liquid boric product. I'm going to go get it now, as a matter of fact.
Borax is the actual stone that is mined from the ground, or powder, depending on how it comes out. And boric acid is a substance that is refined from the borax rock.
I'm back.
I haven't seen this one.
Oh, yeah, this is nifty.
Honeydew formula.
Yeah, it's called Gourmet Liquid Ant Bait.
Cool.
The active ingredient is disodium octaborate tetrahydrate, which is just another name for boric acid. It's at a 1% concentration.
That's really low.
And you can actually water it down 50%. You put it into a container that looks sort of like the Seattle Space Needle, if you will.
Okay.
And the ants congregate at the base. They see the liquid. They go in, they take it, and they go back to their nest, and they die.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of different concentrations of the boric acid usually it's with something the ants want to eat, like sugar. Recipe I know is a 10%. I was reading another one that talked about, from Florida, that talked about 2%. And this is just a 1% concentration. The thing that has to happen is you have to have the concentration low enough that it doesn't kill the worker ant before it gets back to the queen.
Kill the queen.
Right. Once the queen in the ant nest is dead, then all the other ants don't have a purpose in life, and the whole thing falls apart.
We'll have links in today's show notes about this particular liquid ant bait, along with the stations that you can put it in, which include several models. The one that I have that seems to work, and like I say, it looks sort of like the Seattle Space Needle. If you live in the Sacramento area, it looks just like the Cal Expo water tower.
Does the dispenser or the trap come with the bottle of liquid?
Purchase separately.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this is safe to use indoors, like in your kitchen, as well as outdoors, correct?
Place the bait station on or near ant activity. Place stations under food cabinets, sinks, stoves, refrigerators, food storage areas, attics, garages, basements, closets. Place on exterior windowsills and in doorways to help prevent entry of ants. Some bait stations may be designated to be affixed to a wall, hung on pipes or branches, anchored in the ground, or placed on a flat surface.
Wow, sounds like anywhere.
Yeah, just about. Yeah, they have all sorts of different types of bait stations that would work on this. This particular product on its label says that this bait product can be used on a variety of bait stations, including Antopia, KM Ant Pro bait stations, or other similar stations that are sold separately.
Okay.
The trick with this is it slowly dribbles towards the base so the ant doesn't drown in it.
Oh.
They just gradually... Let me bring up a picture of it to show you what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, that when you make your own, you typically... It's either flat, so you've got a flat puddle, sugar and boric acid, and they eat around the edges, or you put it in a container with cotton balls, and it's a liquid, and it sits on the cotton ball so they don't drown.
So actually a more accurate description of the KM Ant Pro liquid bait dispenser, it looks like a pawn in a game of chess.
Oh, yeah, I see that.
And so the liquid is on top. It slowly dribbles down to this outer area, and then there is followed by an even lower ridge. The ants climb up on the ridge, sniff around, and go, something smells good in here, and they take a drink and take it back.
I like that it continuously dribbles down. When I've made my own, I have to add more to it about every day because it dries up. It's when it's that mix of water, sugar, and boric acid is open to the atmosphere, it dries out.
Right. Yeah. And this is a closed container.
Yeah.
So it does last longer like that. We'll have a link to this in today's show notes. What about bait traps for slugs or snails? I know there's bait, but are there traps?
Well, the kind of traps that we make don't include the bait that you buy commercially. Instead, it's something like beer or non-alcoholic beer, if that's your preference. And you put it in a container like a pie pan and lower it into the ground. And they climb in at night. Slugs and snails feed at night, and then they find a place to hide during the day. And so you put this out at night, and they fall into the beer and they drown.
Yay.
Yay.
Yes. Yeah. You could probably go with old style or the $2.99 a six-pack beer.
Yeah.
For this one.
Yeah.
And that does work as long as I guess the dogs and cats can't get to it.
I've never had a dog. Would a dog drink from it? A cat wouldn't.
Okay. A dog would.
Okay.
Yes.
So don't let your dog out at night when the beer trap is filled, or don't let him into that portion of the yard.
Well, if all that's in it is beer, and it's a small container. It depends on the size of the dog.
I'm not worried about the dog. I'm worried about the trap being empty.
Okay. All right. And then, of course, we've talked in the past about products that are iron phosphate that are granules that you will put out there. And that's just little granules that the snails will pick up and take back to the nest.
Right. As always, read and follow label directions because the amount of granules you use is very, very, very few. There used to be metaldehyde bait used to be the only one we had before the iron phosphate became available to control slugs and snails. And that you put out as a line or that they didn't cross. It's continuous. It's not true with the iron phosphate baits. You don't put them out in the same density.
Yeah, and this isn't a bait trap, so to speak, but it works. And as far as deterring slugs and snails is a strip of copper.
Right. It zaps them.
And because their stomachs are made out of something that likes electricity or something. And
well, they're wet.
Yeah, they're slimy. And when they hit that copper strip, it gives them a shock and they turn around. The key, though, with that is you need to keep that copper surface clean.
Right.
So the wooden top of a raised bed would work perfectly for that. However, you want to make sure there's no snails in the raised bed when you apply the copper. Otherwise, you've locked them in the restaurant.
They're not going to come out, yeah. And a place that they like to hide is between the wall of the raised bed and the media that's in it because that's shady and cool. Mm-hmm. So that's a good point, yeah. And in containers as well, slugs and snails hide in the drain holes at the bottom of the pot.
We all have fly swatters. Some of us have fly paper.
Yeah.
Tell us about fly paper.
Fly paper is just a strip of paper that's coated in something sticky that they fly into. You can buy it commercially or you can make your own out of a very thin plastic like the plastic grocery bag and then put something sticky. Vaseline would work. Tanglefoot, which is a brand of stickiness for pest control, would work. And hang it where you have a fly problem. But the commercial ones, just read the label. Always read the label. The commercial ones often have an insecticide in them so that the fly dies from the insecticide as well as getting just stuck. And if you're just using the sticky stuff, they just get stuck and they're stuck there till they die from lack of water or whatever. But you don't want those that are emitting pesticides in your house or in a place where people gather and would breathe that insecticide.
I'm pretty picky about who I allow to advertise on this podcast. My criteria, though, is pretty simple. It has to be a product I like, a product I use, and a product I would buy again. And you know who checks all those boxes? It's Smart Pots. Smart Pots is the oldest and still the best of all the fabric plant containers that you might find. Smart Pots are sold around the world, and they're proudly made 100% right here in the USA. Smart Pots come in a wide array of sizes and colors and can be reused year after year. Some models even have handles, and that makes them a lot easier to move around the yard. Because the fabric breathes, Smart Pots are better suited than plastic pots, especially for hot climates. That breathable fabric has other benefits, too. Water drainage issues? Not with Smart Pots. Roots that go round and round, choking the root ball like they do in plastic pots? Doesn't happen with Smart Pots. These benefits will help you get a bigger, better plant than what you've gotten in the past with the same size plastic or other hard container. Smart Pots are available at independent garden centers as well as select Ace and True Value hardware stores nationwide. To find a store near you or to buy online, visit smartpots.com/Fred. And don't forget that /Fred part. On that page are details about how, for a limited time, you can get 10% off your Smart Pot order by using the coupon code FRED. F-R-E-D. Use it at checkout from the Smart Pot store. Visit smartpots.com/Fred for more information about the complete line of Smart Pots lightweight, colorful, award-winning fabric containers. And don't forget that special Farmer Fred 10% discount. Smart Pots, the original award-winning fabric planter. Go to smartpots.com/Fred. I am amazed at how pheromone traps work, especially for the codling moth that lays the worm. That you see the exit hole in your apples
right.
When the worm is coming out after it's been laid there by the moth. And those pheromone traps hang in the tree, usually in early spring. It's a very complicated formula for when you're supposed to hang pheromone traps for codling moth. It has to do with degree days. And it can be confusing. If you just start as soon as you see the flowers and keep them out until you harvest the fruit, you'll be okay.
Right. The flowers also respond to degree days, so they would be a good check.
But these pheromone traps attract the male codling moths, and that's a sign that you got them. I mean, obviously, you're not going to get them all.
Right.
But at least
they're around.
They're around, and you've controlled a few. I guess.
And they can't mate with the female, who then lays the egg.
And
they're stuck in the trap.
And there are pheromone traps for all sorts of insects.
There are pheromone traps for lots of insects. I suspect Peaceful Valley Farm Supply in Grass Valley would be a source of that.
They would be a suspect, yes.
Groworganic.com. It's a great business for many organic and less harmful pest control.
Now, there is one trap that it's been around for years and years and years, and it's entertaining as all get out. They're electronic bug zappers. But electronic bug zappers, though, are falling out of popularity, and for very good reasons.
Right. They're the ones that you hear go zit, zit, when something flies into it. And there's usually a light. It's often a blue light, but there's a light that attracts insects that fly at night, and they're attracted to that, and they are killed by it. The idea is you're going to kill your bad bugs that way, but a lot of times you're getting the good guys as well. Because
they're attracted to the blue light.
Sure are.
And so I would bet that the majority of bugs that you're actually killing, and by the way, attracting to your yard, could be good guys. The problem with the electronic bug zapper is it shouldn't be hanging in your yard. It should be hanging in your neighbor's yard because it's going to attract them.
Yes, attract them. And that's the thing about baits of all sorts, is it attracts them. They come from a distance, more or less, depending on what the trap is and how sensitive the insect is, from where can they detect it. But they come from a distance to go there. So don't put the trap where you have a great meal for them. Put the trap elsewhere so that they leave the meal and come to the trap instead.
Also, if we're talking about a bigger pest here other than an insect, but rats. And there are electronic rat traps that can catch fire.
Oh,
they're battery operated or actually plugged in, and the rat is attracted to this, what looks like a little lunchbox, and they crawl in and they get zapped. The problem is,
I wasn't aware of that.
It can start a fire. It even says that on the box, but you don't learn that until after you've purchased it online. So I tell you what, if you ever want an electronic rat trap, I've got one.
You've got one. Okay. Yeah. I have 2 cats.
Okay, that
Enough
helps.
Said, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Except when they bring them in alive. Yeah. We've had that happen.
Yeah. I don't know if we want to get into rat traps or not, but sometimes the old traps work the best.
Right.
The old snap traps.
Right. Yes, that's when they do come in the house, when the cats have brought a live rat into the house.
And released it,
yes. And we become aware that there's a rat running around the house somewhere. We try to catch it and take it outside and let nature take care of it. But if we can't, and they're very wily, and in some cases they go places you can't get them, like under the washing machine when I open the door to the washing room. So we put in those little snap traps. First you put them in with bait, but not set. Let them get used to the presence of the trap. And then once they've eaten, usually we use peanut butter, then you put them in with peanut butter and set the trap. And then while you're watching TV, you hear snap.
Yes.
You say, I'm not going. You going?
There are all sorts of enclosed traps like that keep curious dogs and cats away.
Yes, there are.
That have, it's usually a poison in there for the rats. I'm torn about those.
Yeah, my parents had them. They lived in New York and had a lot of vegetation, a lot of ground cover. We had cats as kids, but not as my parents aged. And they got into the attic. So they got a pesticide company that put them out and monitored them and would restock the bait periodically.
What about some homemade traps that use some sort of like fruit juice? And it's usually involving a cutoff container, like a large soda pop bottle, and some fruit juice and a funnel. Yeah,
those are called pit traps. You take an empty soda bottle, cut the neck off, flip it upside down so that where you would drink from is at the bottom and it looks like a funnel and it's hanging inside the rest of the bottle. And then you fill the bottom with whatever will attract the pest of choice. So for flies, it would be something sugary. That could be fruit juice. For if you live near dead animals, You might have blowflies or carrion flies, and they are attracted to something like meat, something with protein in it. If you have fruit flies, which I've had in my kitchen, you can put in something like beer, wine, cider vinegar, or ripe fruit. So there's a little bit of fermentation going on, and they will go in there and drown. Wasps will also go into that similar container. And once they're attracted, you want to have liquid in a little bit of oil. So that gets coating, their body gets coated with the oil, and then they can't breathe and they die.
I guess while we're on the subject, we should talk a little bit about Yellowjacket traps. There are traps you can buy commercially. They're usually like yellow, cone shape. They usually come with some sort of pheromone that you put in there, but you can also bait it with old lunch meat,
right?
Things like that. And that attracts the Yellowjackets. And you got to know the difference between a Yellowjacket and a paper wasp.
Yes.
Paper wasp, when it flies, its legs are hanging down, and they're kind of laconic, and they're the ones that build the egg crate-like structures under the eaves and build their nests.
They're gray, and they're actually made of wood that they chew up in their mouth.
Oh, those aren't your problem. Yellowjackets are a problem. Yellowjackets usually nest in the ground in old tree crevices or holes, or if you're like Fred, in the old big planters that you put in the back 40.
Yes.
And then you go to grab a container and you lift it out of the ground, and all of a sudden you're being chased. And so, and they will stick around. They will follow you. They are, and you can't even, if you want to get away from them, you have to run a zigzag pattern. Don't run a straight line, and run a zigzag pattern.
Would water help if you had a pool?
Actually, they would wait for you.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So how long can you hold your breath?
They have an issue.
Yeah, they do. You've ticked them off.
Yeah.
By disturbing their nest. And it's usually that. It's disturbing their nests when it becomes a problem.
Right.
But those yellow cone-like traps do a pretty good job, especially in late winter, early spring, when the queen is out looking to establish a new home. Right. You want to capture the queen. You can capture 1,000 workers, but if you don't capture the queen, you've still got a problem.
Yeah, and every year everybody dies except the queen, and she's already impregnated, and she spends her winter pregnant and hanging out someplace safe, and then she starts to build a nest and has babies who then become her slaves. But yeah, so that was very interesting when I learned that all those Yellowjackets die except for her.
I bet in your fondest wishes, you would think that children as slaves. Now, there's an idea.
I think that's been tried.
That's not going to happen.
There are also some fly traps that are similar to the Yellowjacket traps. They're not yellow, but they have a pheromone in them, and you hang them outside and it attracts flies. I had to use one once when I brought in a whole bunch of bagged chicken manure, and the fragrance was such that it attracted lots of flies. And so I had to hang the fly trap, and they worked very well.
Another natural control for a big fly population, especially if you have horses and you have a barn and you have a lot of horse manure around, flies like to, congregate in the horse manure. Soldier fly larvae can go a long way to controlling that.
Yes, you can. That's a case where you would probably contact an insectary. There's one called Rincon vitova. I had a friend who had that exact problem, had horses and so she contacted them, and they are very knowledgeable. They need to know that your temperatures and, how big is your pile. I don't know exactly what questions they're going to ask you, but they will ask you a bunch of questions and they can put you on an automatic mailing where you will get a live population of whatever's needed to control the pest you have in your manure.
Let's talk about one pest that doesn't get enough publicity. Fleas. Fleas are difficult to control. You need a three-way attack when it comes to fleas, because it usually begins maybe with your pet.
Right.
And then you're going to have possibly the fleas inside the house.
Right.
And then you could have fleas in the yard as well, especially in damp, shady places or in wood piles, things like that. How do you control fleas with a trap?
Well, fleas are attracted to warmth, which makes sense because they get on animals and feed, and they're attracted to light. And so you can make a trap of your own with a light. It's going to have to be an old-fashioned light, like a halogen bulb, something that generates heat, a halogen bulb, or an incandescent bulb, if you can still find one, and hang that over a dish that contains soapy water. And they will fly to the heat source and fall into the water.
How much is that light above the water?
I don't know that detail.
Okay.
But another option is to get, they make these floating tea candles.
If you say so.
Yes. Oh, got it. For decorating indoors. Yes.
Your fancy outdoor dinner parties with the yellow plates.
Yeah. Yes. When the floating tea candles.
Yes.
And the fleas come right to it. And so you're going to float that in the dishwater, the soapy water, and light it each night. And then the fleas will come to that source of heat and light and fall into the water. That's maybe a little safer way to go. You've got a small floating candle in water. So if something went awry, hopefully the water would put the light out, and you're not plugging in a light and having electricity near water. So each one has its risks.
Yeah. What about mosquitoes? There's certainly a lot of alleged cures for mosquitoes. Citronella seems to be the active ingredient that a lot of people tout, be it citronella plants or citronella candles.
Right. I dislike the smell of citronella. My mother used to use it when we would picnic outside, and I could taste it. I didn't like that. We're eating food. I want to taste the food. Number one thing I like is a fan. Just turn on a fan. You got a breeze going. They can't fight the fan. But another way is some sort of smoke. I use incense sticks. The citronella candle produces smoke, and those things keep the mosquito away.
Yeah, so if you're having an outdoor dinner party and you've got a mosquito issue, call in the College of Cardinals to come to your place to elect a pope. And then when they start burning the fire and the smoke, and you have no mosquitoes.
That's when you can eat. Yes.
Yes, or put in a ceiling fan.
Yes, keep the air moving. I just have a big box fan that I haul out of the garage and turn on.
Now, why are mosquitoes attracted to carbon dioxide?
Well, that's a good question. I assume it means because it's going to be a human or an animal. It's going to be something live from which they can get a blood meal, which is what they're looking for. And so there are ways to attract them to a trap that's producing carbon dioxide.
By the way, did I welcome you to Barking Dog Studios? Welcome to Barking Dog Studios. Yes.
And so you're going to mix some brewer's yeast, which is fairly easy to get. You might have to go to a health food store. Brewer's yeast with some water and sugar. You're going to use that same sort of trap where you cut the top off the soda bottle and turn it upside down. But in the bottom of that bottle, you're going to put a solution that produces carbon dioxide. And there are ways to make that. That is to mix sugar solution with water that does not have chlorine in it. A lot of our municipal water has chlorine in it as a health control for us. So one way to use your municipal water is to just boil it. That'll boil off the chlorine. Then cool it. Mix that with sugar and some brewer's yeast. So a cup of water, a quarter cup of sugar, a gram of yeast for a 2-liter size bottle. Put that in the bottom of the bottle. Put the upside down top, that's like a funnel, in there, and just put it out, and it will produce a steady stream of carbon dioxide, and then that will attract the mosquitoes who will go in and drown.
And I guess if you want that mixture to keep bubbling, just put in more yeast.
Right.
All right.
And sugar, something for the yeast to eat.
All right. Because they're attracted to carbon dioxide.
Right. They also apparently, I didn't know this till I did some research, are attracted to dark colors. So you may want to put some black tape on the bottle or something.
Okay. And of course, I think most people know by now that you don't wear aftershave or perfume to an outdoor summertime dinner party because they'll be attracted to that.
Yes, they like that smell.
Yeah. Can these traps be used indoors?
Yes, they can.
Okay. Right.
Yes. Carbon dioxide gets a bad rap because of our environment, but we're producing it all the time in many ways. Breathing, driving our cars, burning things in general, we're all producing carbon dioxide, and this is a very minimal amount.
One of the handiest things to have in the handy kitchen drawer, and everybody has a handy kitchen drawer where you throw things like screwdrivers, rubber bands, whatever, is double-sided tape.
Oh, yeah.
Because double-sided tape can catch you some crawling insects.
Yeah, crawling scale. Scale is another one of those sucking insects that attaches to plant parts. It's typically attached to the less herbaceous parts, so like the vein of the leaf or the stem. And some scale does produce honeydew. Soft scales, they're called, produce honeydew. Hard scales do not. But they all produce a crawler stage. And that crawler stage crawls and moves from the parent, So the mom has stuck herself to the plant, put her mouth parts in. She just looks like a disc on the plant, and has her babies and does everything just sitting there. And eventually the babies get big enough to crawl and find their own place to feed, and so they walk. And if you put double-sided tape around the plant part that has scale problems, they'll walk on it and get stuck.
But then you have to remove the tape, I would think, on a regular basis.
Right.
And how do you apply double-sided sticky tape to a plant stem?
Yeah, you just go around the stem. I was thinking a leaf, because they can feed on the back of the leaf. But for a leaf, you'd probably do it on the petiole, which is the leaf stem. Mm-hmm. You just wind it around. You may have to, they're so thin, you may just end up making a flat spot, or around the stem itself. But you want to go all the way around.
And probably replace that tape weekly, I would think. Depends on the number of scale you find.
Right. Anything sticky like that, and there are also sticky fluids, we've talked about the tanglefoot, that you can use on plant parts, will collect other things, including dirt. If it's windy and dusty, you're going to get dirt on there. Here's
a lesson I learned the hard way regarding scale and citrus trees. Sometimes in the wintertime, when you know it's going to be really, really cold, you might be tempted to wrap the base of your citrus tree in cardboard or pipe insulation or something, just to protect, especially a young citrus tree, from a hard freeze that might be coming. Well, if you leave that pipe wrap or cardboard wrap tightly around there for too long and go to take it off, a few weeks or a couple months later, it's amazing the number of scale that are in there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you just created a hotel.
Yes, yes. It's one of the reasons we don't paint or cover pruning wounds on woody plants ever, because it tends to bubble up or create little pockets that insects can live in, and fungus and bacteria.
Yeah, exactly. When it comes to pruning trees, as you might want to do in the wintertime, you don't want to put that sealant on just because you might be locking those bad guys in, where they can reproduce.
Protecting them from the beneficial insects and anything else that might kill them.
And again, with the double-sided sticky tape, it's really a monitoring tool. It's not so much an eradication tool. You're not going to
kill the whole population.
Right, but it's going to let you know there's a problem. And I know people who, if they see a lot of scale on citrus trees, they'll just take a plastic scouring pad and
scrape them off. And that's the interior scaper's way of handling pests, because using pesticides inside is a really complicated thing. You have to be licensed, etc. But if you just clean the plant, keep the plant clean, a lot of your problems go away.
This was a lot about traps today. Did we leave anything out?
Boy, I'm sure there's more we could discuss, but we've really loaded their heads with lots of trap information.
Read and follow all label directions.
Always.
Yes, indeed. Debbie Flower, thanks for helping us do some trapping today.
You're welcome, Fred.
Coming up in the Friday, August 26th, 2022 Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter, Debbie Flower and I discuss a pesticide that's available to the home gardener. It's a systemic insecticide, which means it controls sucking or chewing insect pests by poisoning the plant parts that they're eating. Problem is, the beneficial insect population is at risk too when they're around a plant that's been treated with this insecticide, imidacloprid. That's the active ingredient found in many garden insecticides. We tell you how it works, what it controls, and most importantly, how to read the label correctly so you don't misapply imidacloprid and harm the garden good guys. It's all about imidacloprid. Find a subscription link to the newsletter in today's show notes, or visit our website, gardenbasics.net, where you can sign up to have the free Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter and podcast delivered to your inbox each Friday. For current newsletter subscribers, look for All About Imidacloprid in the next Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter coming out on the morning of Friday, August 26th. It'll be in your email. Take a deeper dive into gardening with the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter. And it's free. Find the link in today's show notes or at gardenbasics.net. Garden Basics with Farmer Fred comes out every Tuesday and Friday, and it's brought to you by Smart Pots and Dave Wilson Nursery. Garden Basics, it's available wherever podcasts are handed out. For more information about the podcast, visit our website, gardenbasics.net, and that's where you can find out about the free Garden Basics newsletter, Beyond the Basics. And thank you so much for listening.